linguistic system considering its structure, and then vocabulary and grammar specific of and characteristic of an era, of a writer, or of a social group. Grammar. Then the language of Góngora. This is the example it gives, because Góngora was a Spanish writer. In terms of dialect, what the Oxford Dictionary stated was that it came from Latin and that from Greek. Dialectos, discourse, way of speaking, from dialectai, converse with a particular form of a language which is peculiar to a specific region or social group. Okay? And then if we look at the Spanish language dictionary, dialecto from Latin dialectus is one from the Greek dialectus, a linguistic system considered in relation to the group of several derivatives of a common trunk. Spanish is one of those dialects born of Latin. And a linguistic definition will also be linguistic system derived from another, usually with a specific geographical limitation, but without enough differentiation in front of others with common origin. And it adds linguistic structure simultaneous to another that misses the social category of language. So we had, when I was analyzing these definitions, I found that in the majority of the dictionaries, you had general definition of terms. The definitions were also vague, and the dictionaries are not in agreement with each other as well. And they don't offer scientific, operationable, and accurate definitions in the majority of the cases where there was some level of overlapping, where the dialect definition will be similar to the language definition and vice versa. So since they were not too operationable, so I couldn't work with them for my research. And then I decided that something had to be done about it. So because what is a linguist without a definition of language, right? Is it even possible for a linguist not to have a definition of language? It's not possible. We are linguists and we need to have definition of languages. So I started doing some research, and we came up with some ways to look at this. For example, it was very clear that the dictionaries had not established a congruent definition, but then the same thing happened with the researchers. The researchers did not establish accurate criteria to determine the exact difference between language and dialect. And for example, some authors stated that, for example, Einar Hogen made this clear that the identification and enumeration of languages is greatly hampered by the ambiguities and obscurities attaching to the terms language and dialect. So already in 1966, we had this problem. Then Ethnologue, Languages of the World, which is a database for languages, also stated in 2015 that not all linguists agree on the criteria for language identification. And it says, not all scholars share the same set of criteria for distinguishing what level of divergence distinguishes a language from a dialect. And therefore, the terms are not always consistently applied. So since we had these issues, I continued doing some more research. And then I found that Manuel Alvar, who was a Spanish linguist, had a more consistent definition of language. For example, he stated that a language follows a basic criteria, which is, number one, a strong differentiation among others. It means that the language has to be different enough from other languages, and that will make it a language. And then it has to have a strictly defined rules such as orthography, grammar, phonetics, and these are spread through teaching, media, and other manifestation in society. That is the number one point. Then number two, high degree of leveling. What does that mean? What does high degree of leveling mean? It means that the number of speakers is a high number. Okay, like for example, if Chinese has 1.2 billion number of speakers, and English has 800 million speakers, and Spanish will have 580 million speakers. So these languages have a large number of speakers. So that is what Manuel Alvar was referring to. Then the language, number 3, the language has to be the vehicle of an important literary tradition. It means that not only it has a written manifestation like an alphabet, but it also, many writers have utilized the language in the literary works, in prose, in poetry, and through these works, it has distinguished itself from other languages from the same origin. Like, for example, the English language has a vast literary tradition, and it has distinguished itself from other minor languages that are sister languages of English, and they don't have such vast literary tradition, neither they have that prestige. Okay, and point number 4, it has imposed itself on linguistic systems that belong to the same parent language, and it has succeeded over them. So it means that the other languages have remained inferior at an inferior level, for example, without established rules, uniformity, or a larger literary tradition. And for dialect, Manuel Alvarez stated that it is a system of science derived from a common language, alive or extinct, and normally with a concrete geographic limitation, but without a strong differentiation in front of other common origin languages. Like, for example, let's say that at some point in time, various languages derive from Latin. These are French, Spanish, Portuguese, etc., etc. At that moment when they derived, they were at a level where they were very small, and they were dialects of Latin. At the moment, that has changed. They are still dialects of Latin, but now they have differentiated themselves from other languages and have a high level of speakers that they can be recognized as languages. It doesn't happen like that with the dialects, okay? And in a secondary manner, dialects are those linguistic structures simultaneous to others which don't reach the category of languages. Okay, so then, was it enough? I didn't think this criteria was enough. So what I did is I continue investigating, and I reached 2 other conclusions. For example, my proposal started with some of the points of Alvar, and it continued with my own points. Like, for example, number 1, the linguistic system should present a high degree of leveling. That is, a large number of speakers spread over one or more geographical areas. And the language community should present language coherence. Number 2, it presents an elevated differentiation degree. It means it can stand by itself in a manner where it might not be completely understood by the languages or the speaker of languages that speak those languages that derive from the same as this particular language. Number 3, the linguistic system has thrived over others of the same origin, which have not presented the same level of success, remaining without some of the same factors that make the former successful. For example, if we take the case of Catalan and Spanish, you will find that Spanish has a larger number of speakers, and it has thrived over other languages, like, for example, Catalan, which does not have the same level of success and the same level of speakers. Then the language enjoys a high level of prestige. For example, it is a national language, it is an official language, it is a language of the United Nations or any other international organization of this sort, which is a world organization. So if we look again at the example of Catalan and Spanish, you will see that Spanish has a higher level of prestige because it is the national language of 48 nations. And also it is the official language of 21 nations, and Catalan is just a regional language. Spanish is also a language of the United Nations and other international organizations, the same as English, as French, and Arabic, and any other languages like that. And it is not, for example, Catalan doesn't have the same level of prestige. And then The linguistic system presents written manifestations as well as grammar rules, orthography, phonetics, syntax, etc., which are very well defined. Then the linguistic system is utilized as a medium of instruction, which is not supposed to happen, or it doesn't happen with the dialects. And then the linguistic system is spread through television channels, newspaper, radio, and other media manifestations in society, such as the internet, etc. And at last, the linguistic system presents a vast literary tradition, of which is vehicle and includes many forms of literary expressions such as prose, poetry, and many authors have used it in their works, which are internationally recognized. For dialect, the dialect is a linguistic system which is derived from another. This is very important. It doesn't matter whether the parent language is extinct or alive, and it falls into the above mentioned parameters of language. So it derives from a language. A dialect does not derive from another dialect, okay? Then it is a system of signs parallel to others which presents similar characteristics. So for example, there is one language and that language derived into other languages and with not languages, linguistic system, which are dialects. And then those dialects are sister languages to each other. And then number 3, it is present within a specific limited geographic area. And it does not present a strong differentiation in front of other linguistic systems of common origins. What does that mean? For example, it has a high level of lexical similarity, let's say 90%, 89%, etc., etc. And then it does not adjust to the criteria of language because its characteristics fail to reach that level because it may lack one or more of the following factors. Number 1, a literary tradition, a strong leveling with a high number of speakers, a high level of prestige, being the medium of instruction in some university, in a country, in schools. It is not being used as the language of the media. It has limited or non-existent written manifestations, and the rules such as grammar, syntax, and morphology may be recorded in a limited manner or not recorded at all. So this was my proposal, and then this proposal was tested in one of the languages of Pakistan, which was Saraiki. And Saraiki is it has a large number of speakers in terms of limited geographic area, but this is what we are going to talk about. For example, it is recognized as an ethnicity, but that is a new development because in the 60s, the Saraiki people were not an ethnicity. Saraiki people were recognized only because of the linguistic system. And during this time, because they wanted a new province in Pakistan, they have created a type of an identity to be able to support that ethnicity because they want that separate province, and it is important for them to state that they are an ethnicity. So let's put my proposal into action. So let's see the characteristics of Saraiki under the criteria of language. Okay, for point number 1, a high degree of leveling. Yes, it has a population in all countries, which is Pakistan and some small areas of India, with 20,068,000 speakers. And this is actually the only characteristic or the only criteria of language that Saraiki fulfills. The rest of the criteria are not fulfilled for this language. For example, number 2, high degree of differentiation. Okay, according to Ethnologue, the lexical similarity of Saraiki with Western Punjabi is 70% to 85%, while the lexical similarity of Saraiki with Sindhi is 85%. So they are mutually intelligible with both. What does that mean? That means that if a Punjabi speaker speaks to a Saraiki speaker, they can understand each other very well. And the same thing happens with a Sindhi speaker. Why does that happen? Because the Seraiki speakers are located in a belt between South Punjab and North Sindh. And those Punjabi is a language of Punjab and is next to the Seraiki belt. And Sindhi is a language of Sindh, and it is on the other side of the Seraiki belt. So this is why it is a language that is geographically, it's a linguistic system that is geographically located between these two language areas, and that's why it has a large level of similarity. Is it thriving over others? No. Urdu, Punjabi, and Sindhi have thrived over Seraiki because Urdu is the national and official language of Pakistan. Punjabi is a regional language of Pakistan, and Sindhi is a regional language of Pakistan, while Seraiki is none of those. Seraiki is not an official language, neither a regional language, neither a national language. Does it have a high level of prestige? Seraiki does not have a high level of prestige. Other languages of the area have a much higher level of prestige, such as Urdu, which is the official language and is also the national language. And Seraiki is not the official, national, or even a regional language. Does it have written manifestations and grammar? It has limited grammar studies, or they have recorded the grammar in a limited manner. It has a small dictionary. It has a limited manifestation of written manifestation in Shamuki script, which is also used for Punjabi. So it doesn't have its own script as well. Is it a medium of instruction? No, it is not used as a medium of instruction in schools or universities. Is it a language of the media? There are some radio programs available and TV programs available, but it's not a language of the media that will be transmitted all over Pakistan. Does it have a vast literary tradition? No, the literary tradition is very limited, and some efforts were made by some cultural members of the Seraiki community, but we cannot state that it has a vast literary tradition. Actually, it's quite limited. And then the results indicate that Seraiki does not comply with the great majority of the criteria needed to be classified as a language. In fact, it only complies with the high degree of leveling because it has a large number of speakers. Now, why having a large number of speakers, the other set of criteria are not fulfilled? Well, the main reason is that the Seraiki people have a 1% level of literacy. And this is maybe why they have been unable to promote their language in a more efficient manner. So then after that, we analyze Seraiki under the dialect criteria. And then the first criteria, it meets the first criteria, which is derived from another language. Yes, because there is a similarity level of 70% to 85% with Western Punjabi group of languages and 85% with Sindhi, which indicates that these languages are genetically related. It means that they derive from the same language. Is it parallel to others which present similar characteristics? Again, yes. And the same point as above, 70 to 85% similarity with Western Punjabi and 85% similarity with Sindhi. Present with a specific geographic area subordinate to the national state or region. Yes, it is present in some areas of South Punjab, North Sindh, some smaller areas of KPK and Balochistan as well. It doesn't have a high degree of differentiation. Yes, same as points number 1 and 2. And it does not adjust to the criteria of language. Yes, this has been proven in table number 1 that Seraiki does not adjust to the criteria of language. So the results prove that while the criteria of leveling is met through a large number of speakers, Seraiki does not comply with other important criteria such as prestige, because it doesn't have the national or official or provincial language status. It doesn't have a vast literary tradition. In this case, it's very limited. It is also not the medium of instruction in any school or university. It is not the language of the media. Although it has shown some media manifestations, such as some radio and television programs, It has a grammar and a dictionary, but they are also very limited. And there is some research done into the syntax and morphology of Siraiki, but it's also limited, and it complies with all of the other criteria of dialect. So this is how the model was put into place and tested, and it came out that yes, it complies with the criteria for dialect, and is actually very effective. So thank you very much. And that was that.
Sí, tenemos mucho gusto en escucharlo. Y primera pregunta será de Natia Putkaradze, señora Natia Putkaradze. Ანუ ძალიან დიდი სიხარულით მოვისმინეთ თქვენი ლექცია და პირველი შეკითხვა აქვს ნათია ფუტკარაძეს. ნათია, თხოვთ.
I would like to thank you, dear Maria, for this wonderful lesson for our students and colleagues, among whom we see our students from dialectology course. We teach there with Sopokekua, who is my co-author of this course. And again, I'd like to start with thankful words to you.
Thank you so much.
As for the question, so for my students, let me define. So we have not discussed about Albert yet because we are just it's a beginner's course in dialectology, and we just are working on criteria. But as for Albert, I'd like to tell for them that he studied the Spanish dialects spread in Navarra and Aragon regions, including Andalusia, the Canary Islands, and in his manual of Dialectologia Hispanica in 1996, which was published, he provided social linguistic context of Spanish dialect diversification, including an in-depth historical background, personal names, the development of orthography, phonology, morphology, and the syntax also, right? And the question goes to the criteria of mutual intelligibility. Dear Maria, we all know that that Alvar criticized the traditional methodology, traditional field methods, for instance, focusing on leaving out morphosyntactic variables or forms in isolation rather than in context. He criticized the criteria and he offered also his own solutions. And what about you, for instance? Are there, in case of Siraiki, are there any positions in the scholarly circles between our colleagues who count the mutual intelligibility as a criteria, as an enough criteria, I mean, to give a language status to Siraiki? So what other scholars think, or do they criticize this approach that Siraiki does not, on the basis of the literary tradition, on the basis of phonetic, morphological, and syntactic similarities, which is in the boundary of dialect? So we are interested in different approaches because we would like to know what others think.
Yeah, so for Siraiki, there is a lot of research done, but it is from the previous century. Not at the moment. Our scholars are not really studying Siraiki from a morphosyntactic point of view. For some reason, I don't understand why. Maybe because, as I said before, the Siraiki speakers' level of literacy is about 1%. So those people who speak Siraiki can actually become linguists because they don't have that level of literacy. And the people who don't speak Siraiki are unable to do it because they don't speak the language. And even they have a different level of literacy. But in the previous century, there were some foreign scholars like Shackle, Grierson, and some other ones who talked about that. But they didn't agree on their points of view. So I have discussed this very extensively in my article.
Sure, and we have read your article, of course, and this is very important for us. That so it's also very interesting the approach of the foreign scholars. So we will learn in depth this case because it's important for us to know what criteria are they using and what they are based on. Okay, thank you for answering. Thank you very much, Misha.
My pleasure.
Any other questions?
Sí, muy bien. Y segunda pregunta es que, ¿qué piensa usted de la criteria de Alexander von Humboldt, que es que cada nación tiene su lengua? La lengua es el cara de la nación, así dicho. ¿Qué piensa usted de eso?
Yo, ¿en español o en inglés?
En inglés. En
English. Okay. So what you were asking me is what I believe about, or if I agree with Humboldt on the point of view that languages must differ from one another in the same way as the identities of the speakers differ from one another. So yes, I agree that every language has its own identity. And the language actually reflects the culture of the speakers. So for example, when I speak Spanish, my mood totally changes. But when I speak English, I'm in a very serious mood. And if I speak Urdu, so my mood will also change as well according to the mood of the particular language. So it is true that when a person speaks various languages, he has access to the culture it represents. So I agree with Humboldt on this. Every language has its own identity and its own culture, and this is something that we cannot separate from one another.
Yeah.
ხადია თარგმნა მიშა თუნებას ხადია ვეთარგმნებით და ვიზიარებთ ჰუმბოლდტის მოსაზრებას, რომ ენა არის ერისსული ენისა და გონის შესახებ. ხადია ენას აქვს საკუთარი იდენტობა. პირადად ჩემს შემთხვევაში, როდესაც საუბრობ ურდუზე, ინგლისურ ენასა თუ ესპანურზე, აი ამის მიხედვით იცვლებაო ჩემი განწყობა და ხადია ვეთანხმები და ვიზიარებ.
Muchas gracias. და კიდე თუ არის შეფასებები მეგობრებო, დასვით და ბარემ თარგმნის მედანათია. შესაბამისად გიცდით.
ხო, მაგრამ განწყობა შეიძლება იცვლებოდეს, როცა ის არა ესპანურ ენაზე საუბრობს და ასე ვთქვათ, გადმოსცემს თავის აზრს, მაგრამ განწყობის შეცვლა ხო არ გულისხმობს, რომ სააზროვნო ენას ცვლის.
ნათია, შენ
სააზროვნო ენას ის ვერ შეცვლის, ჩემი აზრით.
დიახ.
ავტომატიური თარგმნა გონებაში, თქვათ, სხვა ენაზე არ ნიშნავს, რომ ის იმ ენაზე აზროვნებს. ამისი თქმა მინდოდა უბრალოდ.
Ms. Professor Revasherozia from Zugdidi State University from the west part of Georgia has a question or maybe rather comment. He says that maybe we change mood while in the process of speaking on different languages, but we don't change the way of our thinking. So mood does not mean our changing our characteristics.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Mood that does not mean we change our character. But for example, it is not the same for a person to speak his native language and to speak a second language. So obviously, a person is more fluent in one language than another. And also the language, when a person is speaking a language, it also has to have in consideration the culture that it represents. So there are different expressions in each language. Like, for example, if we take Punjabi, there is an expression which is achak de patte. So achak de patte means that bring the roof down. If we take that literally, we will be breaking a roof probably. But actually, it doesn't mean that. It's a festive type of comment, So obviously, every language has its own characteristics, character, mood, and especially identity.
მაგალითები დაასახელა პანჯაბიენიდან. დიახ, ბატონო რეზაბდანეთ.
ხო, ამასვე მიებმის ნათია ის, რომ აი თქვათ, როცა ადამიანი სხვა ენაზე, სხვა ენობრივ სისტემაზე ლაპარაკობს, ანუ ისწავლის და ლაპარაკობს, არ ნიშნავს, რომ ის თავის სააზროვნო ენაზე არ ფიქრობს, ანუ ის თარგმნის. და ამას მიებმის ის შემთხვევაც, როცა მე ჩემი სააზროვნო ენობრივი სისტემის გადასხვაფერებულ, ანუ ქვესისტემაზე როცა ვსაუბრობ, ქვესისტემაზე, ანუ დიალექტზე როცა ვსაუბრობ, მაშინ იგივე პროცესი კი არ ხდება. ანუ დიალექტზე როცა არის საუბარი. ანუ აქ დიდი განსხვავებაა, როცა მე თქვათ ქართველი ინგლისურად ვსაუბრობ, მაგრამ ვაზრუნებ ქართველურად და როცა მე ქართველი ვსაუბრობ, თქვათ, იმავე რომელიმე ჩემსავე დიალექტზე, ეს არის იგივე. ანუ მე თარგმანს კი არ ვაკეთებ, როგორც ინგლისურად ლაპარაკის დროს, არამედ იმავე სისტემით ვაზროვნებ. Am შემთხვევაშიც. ანუ დიალექტზე საუბრის დროსაც.
Muy bien, voy a traducir yo que dijo el señor Rezo Sherozia. Esto es que cuando una persona habla en su lengua oficial y en su lengua materna, y él habla lo que piensa. Y cuando él habla en su dialecto, quiere decir en la parte de su lengua, de la lengua suya, él también habla lo que piensa. Y él usa el mismo sistema que es su lengua. ¿Qué piensa usted de eso?
Okay. So his comment was that when a person uses his own language or his own dialect or a foreign language or dialect, the person will still transmit his thoughts. So yes, obviously I agree with that. If a person has an opinion, that opinion is not going to change just because a person is speaking a foreign language or a mother tongue. I definitely agree with that.
თანახმოვარო ბატონო რეზო თქვენთანო, რომ ზუსტად ეგრეა როგორც თქვენ ამბობთო, როდესაც ადამიანი საუბრობს ერთ ენაზე და როდესაც ადამიანი საუბრობს დიალექტზე, ანუ ერთი და იგივე სისტემა, როდესაც გამოიყენება საუბრის და ფიქრის დროსო, არ იცვლებაო შესაბამისადო. ანუ როდესაც უცხო ენაზე საუბრობს, ის თარგმნის ფიქრს და როდესაც ერთი და იმავე ენის დიალექტებზე საუბრობს, ის არ თარგმნის ფიქრს, უბრალოდ იგივე სისტემის ორ სახესხვაობას იყენებსო. თანახმოვარო ამაზეო და მეც ასე ვფიქრობ. ძალიან კარგი.
ეს საკითხი უბრალოდ იმიტომ გავუსვი ხაზი, რომ დღეს ზოგიერთი, თქვათ, ლინგვისტი თუ არა ლინგვისტი, ლინგვისტ გონია, რომ ერს ხალხს შეიძლება სააზროვნოდ ერთ ენობრივ სისტემაზე მეტი კონდეს.
ხო. კი ბატონო. გასაგებია.
ჩემთვის ეს აბსურდული მსჯელობაა.
კი ბატონო, კი ბატონო. El señor Rezo dice que él piensa que una etnia tiene un idioma para pensar y para hablar y varios dialectos de ese idioma para pensar y para hablar y eso es todo un sistema, un solo sistema. Sí, y le pido a señora Zahida Mansur, Mrs. Zahida Mansur, Khushamdid.
Dr. Zahida, are you there?
There was a comment written by her, and yeah. Maybe we can read
that was referring to my Punjabi allusion when I said the chak de patte. She stated that it means have a blast. Okay. The meaning of that, the translation of that is bring the roof down. It's a metaphor. So the real meaning of that is have a blast or enjoy.
Okay.
So some of my students are also here, like Mr. Shamir Saman and Mr. Zahir Hussain, and Dr. Saheda Mansour is a colleague from another university. Nazia Latif is also here.
Khushambid dost. If you want to ask something, Khushambid.
Shamir, do you want to answer to that?
I'd like to say just nice to meet you, the students from the university. We are happy to see you here.
Me too.
Sahir, do you want to say anything?
Assalamu alaikum and hi everyone. Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a real delight to listen to you, and
thank you.
I was enlightened with your research work. It was pertinent discussion as far as a student of linguistics is concerned for me. Excuse me. So there was a very interesting, that thing which I would like to share. A couple of things probably. One is about Saraiki language, that there is a prejudice of Saraiki speakers when they call themselves that they are using a different language. They believe that the Saraiki is an independent language and it has influence, but they also believe that Punjabi it has the influence of Saraiki language, and Saraiki is more remote or older than Punjabi language. So that's a prejudice, and as you have discussed this thing, that there are 7 criteria on which only one is fulfilled by Saraiki language. So that's, I think it was a very reason-based answer and research-based answer, that Saraiki is a kind of a dialect. It's not a language in that way. Second thing, I would like to hear that from the since childhood, I used to listen that after every 40 miles, a language is changed. So that's also a unique thing for me at that time, that how can it be that, because limited mind cannot accept this thing, that after 40 miles, there is a change in the language. Now this conversion from, that distance to distance, that's very interesting to note. And you rightly pointed out that the Saraiki language, that is in fact canvassed by Punjab on one side and Sindh on the other side. So it is, that Saraiki itself is having the terminology, lexicology, grammar, that the phonetics of both the languages. So the tonal effect comes from Sindhi language, and that the rest of the phonetic aspects of Punjabi language are in Saraiki language. So there is hard to believe that Saraiki is a language. So I congratulate in your regarding your research that you rightly pointed out that it's a dialect. Thank you.
Shukriya, Mr. Zahir Hussain. It was very interesting. Shukriya. Y claro, nosotros hablamos de eso. ჩვენ კიდევ ვაგრძელებთ საუბარს, ვისაც კიდევ რამე შეკითხვა გაქვთ, არა ქართველთაგან შეგიძლიათ დასვათ პირდაპირ ეთერში და გაგცემთ ქალბატონი მარია პასუხს. გთხოვთ, თუ ვინმეს აქვს შეკითხვა, მათია შემომაშველე ინგლისურად.
მიშა, მე მაქვს შეკითხვა. ეხლა ბევრი სხვა მე აღმოვჩნდი აი იმ კახელის პოემაში, პოზიციაში, რომელსაც ინგლისურად დაელაპარაკნენ. ხო და ეს თუ შეიძლება რომ ეს თქვათ სტატიის სახით ან რაღაცა თარგმანის სახით მისი აი ეს დღევანდელი მოხსენება რომ ჩვენ
კი ბატონო
ჩვენ გადმოგიგზავნით ბატონო რეზო, ჩვენ გადმოგიგზავნით ქალბატონი მარიას სტატიებს ამ ენისა და დიალექტის კრიტერიუმების შესახებ და ასევე დღევანდელი ლექციის პრეზენტაციას. ყველა იმ მსურველს შეგვიძლია გავუგზავნოთ, ვინც თავის იმეილს და ელექტრონულ პოსტას მოგწერს ან კომენტარებში და თქვენ აუცილებლად და კიდევ ნებისმიერ მსურველს ექნება საშუალება რომ გაეცნოს დღევანდელი ლექციის მასალებს. The question was about the presentation and the articles written by Professor Dr. Maria Isabella Maldonado Garcia. We will share everything. So the links for her articles, which are located on the repositories of academic articles, and also we will share the presentation slides of today's meeting. For everyone, and for you, Mr. Reza, of course.
მოკლედ კიდევ გრძელდება ჩვენი შეკითხვები, თუ აქვთ ქართველ მონაწილეებს შეკითხვები დასვან, ნათია შენც შემომეშველა რომ ინგლისურ ენოვნება.
If there are any other questions, we are ready to answer also from the Cardiology Center or from Professor Maria.
ჩვენ შეგვიძლია მართლაც დავასრულოთ, თუ არ არის შეკითხვები. Señora Maria.
Or we can finish our meeting there.
Podemos terminar nuestra conferencia y en conclusión yo puedo decir que era muy bien conocerla.
Muchas gracias, igualmente.
Está muy interesante, era muy interesante esa conferencia y tengo mucho gusto en escucharla y tengo
mucho orgullo de estar aquí.
Pienso que nosotros nos encontramos muchas veces.
Claro que sí. I also hope that we will meet many times and we will collaborate on some articles. Maybe we could study some languages of Georgia or whatever you would like to do. Sure.
That would be great.
Y quiero decir a todos, a georgianos, a españoles, a pakistaníes, muchas gracias. Didi madloba, shukriya, dosti.
What does shukriya mean, Misha?
Thank you.
Shukriya is muchas gracias. Shukriya.
Wonderful. When did you find time for learning Urdu vocabulary, Misha? I'm just surprised.
Yeah, I'm also curious about that, Mikhail.
გაოცებული ვარ მიშა როდის ასწრებს ურდუს შესწავლას. So shukriya means today we have learned one more important thing. Shukriya
is Arabic word for
thank you. Madloba. ხო ამას ნიშნავს.
Yes, shukriya.
Okay. Thank you very much. Shukriya.
Muchas gracias. Didi madloba, shukriya para participar.
I like that one very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sí. Era un favor.
No, it has been a pleasure for me to be here with all of you and answer your questions. And it was a surprise for me that University of Georgia was interested in my research. Very pleasant surprise. And,
estamos interesados en todo lo que pasa en el mundo entero.
Me alegro mucho.
We have read your articles, we have analyzed your articles and the articles of your colleagues, and now we are interested what kind of case we can learn some new information for us described in your articles. So again, we would like to thank you. We are sorry for our English and not speaking Spanish and Urdu, but
no, it's all right. I mean, this is quite astonishing that you know so many languages in the same conference. This is very nice to have that. Thank you.
Señora María, yo juro que cuando nos encontramos más una vez, luego, yo hablaré en Urdu. Muy bien.
I also hope so, Mikhail. Mikhail is saying that next time we meet. Mikhail is saying that next time when we will meet, he will already be.
Me gusta mucho hablar los idiomas, varios idiomas, y por eso estoy lingüista.
Por eso eres lingüista, claro que sí, claro que sí.
Y por eso soy lingüista, sí. Ser y estar en español es diferente, pero en georgiano existe un verbo, hopna, y usamos un verbo para eso. Y claro que sí, podemos terminar nuestra conferencia, era muy bien, escuchamos con mucho gusto. Y por eso podemos decir hasta luego, señora María.
Muchas gracias.
Hasta luego, todos los participantes, y que se vaya bien.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Didi Madhva.
Thank you.
Shukriya.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.